Welcome back to Big Sky Sounds. Today I have the enormous pleasure to be joined by three wonderful soloists who are joining us for our concert Song for Humanity featuring the Hungarian Andante and Rondo from Weber, and we also have Brahms' very famous A German Requiem. And I am joined today with solo sopranoist Suzanne Ramo. We have our guest conductor, Tristan Rais-Sherman, and we also have our very own Julien Rollins making his solo debut on the bassoon. So welcome and thank you all for joining me here today.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much.
having us.
And we're all from different parts of the country. Julien, obviously you're from here, but you have to fly back for these things. I just want to know a little bit about each of you before we dive into this to get to know each other. I guess I'll just go in a circle if that works for everyone.
Sure.
Yeah, wonderful. So Suzanne.
Hi, I'm Suzanne, and I'm a military brat, but I claim Cheney, Washington as my hometown. So I'm from sort of near, by Western America standards, sort of near, and moved to Texas many years ago to pursue my graduate work, and then traveled around being a singer and was with the San Francisco Opera for several years, and now I'm based in Central Texas.
Oh, wonderful. Warmth.
Where it is warm. It's gloriously warm in the winter.
So, I miss it. And Tristan,
Yes.
can you share a little bit about yourself with our audience?
Yeah. So I actually live in New Haven, Connecticut, but I'm assistant conductor of the Philadelphia Orchestra, so I spend half the year or so with them. And yeah, I've spent a lot of my life in Connecticut, and it's funny, this is the first time I've been in Montana, and I haven't been out west so much in my life, so it's always just like the nature you have here. We do not have anything remotely like it, and just how expansive everything is really remarkable and incredible. So yeah, it's just really cool to be here.
We're really excited to have you.
Thank you.
We know that we were supposed to have Robert Moody,
Yeah.
but unfortunately he had a family emergency, and we had the privilege of having you join us,
Yes.
and you just did the Brahms Requiem.
Yeah, so I just served as assistant conductor in Philadelphia. Yannick Nizets again conducted, but I was very involved in the preparation, working with the choir, and was immersed in the piece just 2 weeks ago. So it was very, very fresh in my mind, and I happened to have this 1 week free, which like really is the only week for the next like 3 months where this could have worked, and it just all worked perfectly in the sense that we could do this. So very exciting.
It is. And just, you bring such a different life. You're young, you have a lot of energy, you're vivacious, and the last couple nights watching you conduct have been just, it's such a pleasure for me to watch, sitting back in the audience and recording you guys. But even like the feedback from the different people and musicians that I've talked to, it's been really all high marks and high regards, and they're very excited. So thank you again for short notice coming out and joining us. And
No, it's been everyone's been so kind and patient and open, welcoming, flexible. So it's been great.
you've also been very flexible, so we appreciate your help on that end too. And then, of course, Julien, welcome back to your hometown.
Yep.
How's it feel?
Oh, it feels great, as it always does. It's always nice coming back here, especially playing with the Billings Symphony, where, as you mentioned before, my mother, plays in the Billings Symphony. She's been playing there since about 2010, so my father and I would always sit together in the lower balcony and basically watch the Billings Symphony. So, like, for me, like, being able to play in a symphony that really I always enjoyed going to, and always being very close to home. It was always like my role model for like what to be, and like finally going back and being able to give back to that community and being play in it, that has always really been really meaningful to me, and I'm always really happy playing with it. And especially like playing with a lot of the mentors I have, like with Sue Logan, our principal oboist. I did take some lessons with her, and so it's like now interesting, like going from like taking lessons with her on bassoon, giving me all the musical advice she could, to all of a sudden being able to play with her, is just something incredible. And our current principal bassoonist there right now, Elizabeth Crawford, like, she was my teacher back in high school. So it is very nice to like go back to like playing with my mentor and teacher who really had a impact on me growing up, and especially in my senior year of high school when my longtime teacher, Susan Wadsworth, who was the principal bassoonist of the Billings Symphony for like a decade, when she moved out of the state and retired, like, I didn't really have anyone else, so I turned to Elizabeth, and I drove all the way to Rexburg for Rexburg, Idaho. So that's a 4-hour drive, and I'm for my senior year. So yeah, like I had to drive to the neighboring state for lessons.
Well, and it's done so well for you. You were part of our youth orchestra as well. You were an intern for us.
Mm-hmm.
You went off to Boston and completely just killed your senior recital recently. And having you here back in your hometown with the full support of your orchestra and your mom being there and your mentors, the people who you grew up watching and playing with and who've been teaching you, we're all just so proud of you, and we are so thrilled to have you here with us for your solo debut. It's definitely, it's gonna be a wonderful experience for everyone, and you have the full backing of Billings right behind you, and Montana probably, because I'm just gonna put them on that pedestal right now and claim that. But anyway, you are doing a really beautiful bassoon concerto. Is it a concerto?
Yeah, it's a concerto.
Okay, wonderful. And how did it go learning how to practice this? Is this what you did for your senior recital?
I did it in my senior recital, yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
So it's I actually first worked on it when I was a sophomore in high school, so I was 15 years old, and I actually wanted to enter to the Montana Association Symphony Orchestra's Mosso's youth concerto, or young artists concerto competition, and that was my first time doing that, and I could not really play that. I mean, the end of both of the Andante and the Rondo are very virtuosic and very technical. Like, you have to be able to triple tongue, so taka 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 to do that. Where like I couldn't do that. So, needless to say, when I submitted the tape, it was not surprising that I did not get invited to the final round. But nevertheless, it was nevertheless like it kind of gave me for a test for like a taste for like the really going for the technical stuff, which is always what's like bassoon. I kind of find that I always like doing that. So every time there's always been like a super hard thing, I've always been like, I'll play it. So it's kind of really interesting to when I recorded it last year to go to the final round, in which I did. It was, and then eventually later on be able to play with the Billings Symphony. Like, that has been my dream since I was in high school. In fact, I actually bought the neck strap I used to stand up playing bassoon originally in high school for that event that I would play with the Billings Symphony. So I can even tell you that, like, on the rehearsal on Tuesday, like, just as I was about to play, I was like, well, this is it. This is what 15-year-old Julien wanted to do. Finally getting to do it, and finally being able to do it on the piece that I initially auditioned on to try to get in. So, like, that's been, like, super fun. Like, this has basically been the dream of my high school self, now finally coming into reality.
That's amazing, and it's a full circle. So dreams really do come true. Speak it into existence. That is a really good lesson right there. But what's even more interesting is you and Tristan actually know each other.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that's crazy.
Yeah, we were both in Boston at NEC.
Yep.
I in the fall of 2019 started an artist diploma there in conducting, and was there for 6 months or so, and then COVID happened. So the second part of my degree there changed dramatically, of course. But yeah, we met there and we worked together on concerts, and we played Brahms 3.
Yep, in your
together,
graduation
my,
concert.
my final concert there, and yeah.
That's neat. So how does it feel to be able to do this now together?
Well, I mean, it was just one surprise after the other because the way this came together was, of course, like really fast. And then, so I didn't look at all the details right away. I just knew like I had to go to Billings tomorrow and on these pieces. And then when I read through the list of guest artists, I was like, I know this person. But it was just bizarre to go, you know, 3/4 of the way across the country and have this line up like
I
this.
know. It's a small world. I mean, especially when I found out that, like, yeah, we're going to have a new guest conductor. It's going to be this guy. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah, really, it's a small world.
That's so wonderful, though. And seeing you two work together the other night was just, you can tell that you have that kind of connection. So I'm really excited to see how the performance comes together. I know it sounded wonderful the other night, so I'm sure we'll all be blown out of the water. But thank you. That's so neat to see how the music world really does connect people. And I think, speaking of like connecting, that's one of the things with the Brahms Requiem. You three are all in it. So how does the Brahms Requiem stand out to musicians, but as well as non-musicians? What are some of those important pieces?
Gosh, I don't know. I don't know when I wasn't a musician, so I'm not sure. But if we think about the Requiem, the German Requiem, but this time in English, in relation to the Requiem that is the part of the Catholic liturgy that is for the dead. This is for the living. The Brahms Requiem is for the living, and getting us through, seeing us through the dark times and back into the light. Really is kind of how I see this piece. It's also, it's absolutely beautiful. It's one of my favorite pieces of music in general. I heard it the first time, I think, when I was in college with the Spokane Symphony, and was completely entranced, just absolutely blown away. And it ended up being the first thing I did as a professional singer in my mid-20s. And it's just kind of come up for me throughout my life and career. No, it's just, it's gorgeous, and it really is for those of us who are here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Brahms is always, I think, are very often at the top of people's lists, like for their favorite composers, both musicians and audience members. I think for me as a musician, it's the craftsmanship that he brings. Like it's like a woodworker looking at like a perfect table. You know, it's just so well built in like the sort of technical musical side. But I think for audiences, what's really remarkable, and for listeners, and it strikes me all the time, and especially in this piece, is that Brahms does two things at once kind of all the time, which is that he writes in a way that's monumental and majestic and really expansive. But also simultaneously, he writes in a way that is extremely private and intimate and is really moving emotionally. So these two things coexist constantly in his music, and it's just very unique and very powerful. So I think that is why his music ends up being so beloved.
Definitely. And do you think, I think I know your answer, but do you believe that it is that way for both musicians and audience alike, or even people who haven't gone and experienced the Brahms Requiem in person, because of what it is based on, how he wrote it, and what really influenced that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the inspiration behind the piece, like Brahms was a very private person. He like burned many letters, he burnt music and threw it into the river, and his most important piece of furniture was his waste bin. So because he was very self-critical. But this piece has very private, intimate inspiration and influence behind it. Written first, inspired by two big events in his life, which was the complete mental collapse of his mentor, Robert Schumann, in the mid-1850s, but then 10 years later, like the real catalyst was the death of his mother. So these it serves as kind of like a dual memorial to these people. And so the meaning behind the piece, the word comfort is said dozens and dozens of times throughout the piece. And I think that is like the overarching message behind it, is providing comfort to those still alive. These other requiems often focus on like the souls of the dead and what happens afterwards. This is very much, it doesn't avoid it completely, but it does not emphasize it. It's really about us in life processing grief or seeking solace. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, it certainly is a very touching piece, and especially kind of how, as everyone's been saying, like it really does interlock with everything, and yet it has this private, almost simple quality to it that can be really transported across any kind of almost any medium form. My first encounter with this was actually at the Red Lodge Music Festival, where one year in my high school, we did in my high school years. So after my sophomore year in high school, we did the first movement, "Blessed Are Those That Will Mourn," for band version, and I found that very, very touching. How it's like extremely dense and very interlocked and very interwoven with each other, as is Brahms' style, but yet it had this soulful quality in it that I was just moved by it. And the nice thing is for me now playing this is that I get to like sit in the middle of that, and especially for me when I'm on the concertino part, so I don't play the first movement. And the first movement's is probably my favorite one, that tied with the second movement. So like getting to sit there and like hear this whole thing happen instead of having to play with that. Especially with Brahms, like with bassoons, like in concert bassoons, where like he writes things that go on for so long, like you're constantly playing, so like your lips can get tired very easily. So not having to worry about that for a little bit is a very nice thing.
Yes, especially after having a big solo.
Well,
Probably a good reprieve, a little bit right there.
Yeah, but still, even if you didn't play the big solo, or you're sitting around for a long time and like, okay, 12 pages, here we go.
It's a page turner. It's very long. I was following along last night during rehearsal in our principal timpanist's book, because he had it with him, and so we were just sitting there and I was following along because I sang soprano. Yeah. So I just kept following the chorale. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a very unique piece. Even with how we were talking earlier, just the movement and getting the mesh of the voices with the instruments, and how do you balance that? And from a soloist performance part, what is very important to you when it comes to standing above or standing with the chorale?
Well, it's knowing that, of course, you're a part of the whole. So soloist, yes, but a part of that whole, the whole tapestry of sound and expression, and especially in the movement, the soprano solo, that it's this wonderful dialogue. It's not a dialogue. The chorus echoes the inner, kind of the inner monologue of the soprano soloist. So to express this beautiful text. So for me as a soloist, it's really about being a part of the whole, and there's something just thrilling about being on stage, and depending on where you're sitting, oftentimes in the front, sometimes with the choir, but this wall of Brahms sound that's moving through your body, and I sit there for 4 movements before I do anything, but it's just this, it's a visceral experience to feel and experience the whole sonic landscape and the emotional landscape that we're a part of. So yeah, it's just being a part of that.
Wonderful. Yeah, I agree. And even being in the audience, it's very moving, and you can tell. So to wrap up, is there any last things that you would like to touch on before we jump into the wonderful music?
Just I think it's just one of these fantastic pieces where you can relax, close your eyes, and just breathe with the piece. It's a very human, just like the title of the concert is a very human and warm experience that you get in the concert hall from it. And Brahms writes in a way that's so radiant that it's just kind of delightful for the ears and the soul. So, yeah.
Well, it will be such a great experience for everyone who is playing, who is singing, and of course our audience members and everyone who gets to experience it firsthand. So thank you again so much, all of you, for joining me. I know we didn't have a whole bunch of time to talk about it, and I would love this conversation to continue, but unfortunately I cannot. But thank you again, and thank you for coming out to Little Montana and helping support us. We appreciate it so much.
Love being here.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
fun
you.
being here.
Yeah.